A bacterial serial killer is on the loose. No one is safe.
This was not just going to be one or two cases of people dying. This was going to be more than that.
This is the story of the deadliest outbreak of its kind ever recorded in the world.
It's a horrific death for anyone.
Can investigators track the killer and stop the carnage? November 1996. An 80-year-old man lies dying in a Scottish hospital. His death will be slow and agonizing. He will be the first of 21. His funeral will be part of an international story.
Huge outbreak of food poisoning in Scotland has claimed at least 5 lives and left about 100 people seriously ill.
It all began 2.5 weeks ago in a town hardly anyone had heard of. Wishaw in Lanarkshire, Scotland. Once a jewel in the industrial crown of Victorian Scotland, the town still has a proud community.
What do you think?
Lauren McFarlane looks forward to her 18th birthday party next Saturday. Her family have hired the back room of a pub, and the local butcher will supply the meat for a buffet.
Lovely big room.
Will it fit all my friends?
Oh, I don't think so.
Lauren and her mum Faye have been planning this for months and are hoping it will be an event to remember. It will be, but not for the reason they hope. On the other side of Wishaw, 75 elderly people enjoy their annual Christmas lunch at the church hall. Jessie Rogerson missed the lunch 2 years ago and is thrilled to attend this one with her friends. They hungrily tuck into the tasty steak pie, beef broth and gravy. 80-year-old Harry Shaw is not a big eater, but always enjoys the gathering, given free for the pensioners every Christmas by the church. Two days later, Harry is suffering terrible stomach cramps and has severe diarrhea. The elderly man has no idea of the hell he is about to endure. The next day, Harry is passing blood. At the same time, a 5-year-old girl in Wishaw is suffering from the same symptoms. Her doctor takes no chances. He sends her diarrhea in for testing. The doctor's thoroughness is about to be justified on a frightening scale. The staff at the laboratory in Monklands Hospital test for several common bacterial infections. It's none of them. Chief microbiologist Kenneth Liddle was head of the laboratory.
Commonest bugs in terms of causing diarrhea, whether it's food poisoning or otherwise, is usually Campylobacter. And that's one of an array of bugs that we test for routinely in the laboratory.
But the little girl is infected with a potential killer. To their surprise, it's E. coli type 0157. There is no cure. Though rare in the developed world, in the third world, the bug kills thousands every year and preys on the weakest. A frightening scenario according to E. coli specialist and the man who will lead the outbreak inquiry, Professor Hugh Pennington.
It's quite a rare bug, so to find it at all rings alarm bells, and to find it in a 6-year-old girl, well, it hits people at that age group hard.
When E. coli infects the human bowel and replicates there, it causes internal bleeding. Frequently, the effects of the toxins given off by the microbes result in kidney damage, respiratory problems, brain dysfunction, and death. 6 years ago, Liddell investigated a case of E. coli infection at Hartwood Hill Hospital, only a few miles away. The vicious bacteria spread from one patient to another 10. 4 died horribly. Liddell's department is the first port of call in a suspected outbreak. The lab does 20 fecal tests a day.
It would be unlikely that we would recover any that were positive for E. coli 157. Generally, in an average year in the 1990s, we had 1 case per year.
But, checking with other experts and phoning the local doctors in Wishaw, the microbiologist soon confirms his worst fears. The bacteria is spreading. Liddell locates 2 more cases of confirmed infection at Law Hospital, a 60-year-old and a 14-year-old, both from the little girl's town, Wishaw. There are also 2 more cases of the same painful symptoms. Liddell nervously calls the infectious diseases consultant at another hospital. There is a disturbing number of elderly patients suffering in the same way as the child. One doctor has 5 cases, all of them from Wishaw, 3 who were at the church lunch. It threatens to get worse. Liddell worries about infection reaching more children or elderly people. A 5-year-old girl is infected. And Harry Shaw was admitted to hospital yesterday. His symptoms now present the worst scenario. Harry can't keep food down, and doctors are concerned about the amount of blood he is losing. Liddell alerts local public health specialist Dr. Saeed Ahmed. He immediately forms an outbreak control team.
When you get a phone call from Dr. Ken Liddell telling you that potentially you got 3 cases, all came from the same area, that rang an alarm bell, and immediately I realized that we may be dealing with something we need to urgently look into.
E. coli lurks like a shrouded assassin. It's around us all the time, and it only takes a few mistakes to let it back into the food chain again and again. The priorities are obvious: to stop the spread of the infection and to wipe out its source. This bug is hard to kill. It doubles in number every 20 minutes. It is invisible and has no taste, and it's hard to trace.
Normally in a food poisoning outbreak, it's really quite difficult to find the smoking gun, because the smoking gun is the food that the people ate that poisoned them. And of course, by definition, it's been eaten, so it's gone.
The bacterial serial killer must be caught, and DNA fingerprinting could be the key. It is day 6. Cases of E. coli infection increase as investigators desperately hunt what is known as the hamburger bug. Originally identified in California in 1975, its first outbreak came in the summer of 1982. 47 people in America were infected by E. coli. Suspected culprits were undercooked burgers from certain McDonald's restaurants. In a separate incident, the bug infected another McDonald's restaurant in 1991 in Preston, England. 23 people fell ill. Named after Theodore Escherichia, who isolated its ancestor in 1885, Escherichia coli, type 0157, is a new strain of an old harmless bacteria. This deadly bacteria is a dangerous mutant.
Hi, may I take your order, please?
Yeah, I'd like a small hamburger, please.
In 1993, it struck the Jack-in-a-Box burger chain in Washington state. More than 700 people were infected. 4 children died. It is estimated that 200 million cases of E. coli occur annually, and lead to 650,000 deaths.
There had been deaths from E. coli of children who were fit, healthy young kids who'd just gone out and eaten a burger which had E. coli on it, and after a painful and distressing illness had died.
Investigators are stumped. Where could the deadly bacteria be hiding?
It became clear that there were two potential sources for this potential outbreak as we had at that time. One would be milk. Two of the patients, the three patients, had bought the milk from one supermarket.
The outbreak control team quickly turned their attention to a nightmarish outbreak only 2.5 years ago in a Bathgate dairy, 15 miles from Wishaw. Contaminated milk killed a child and led to 5 cases of kidney damage. But collating food histories from all the infected patients shows that not all have drunk milk from the dairy. It is quickly discounted. Microbiologist Kenneth Liddell turns to the other option.
Meat products were a potential source. In fact, patients reported having bought meat or a meat product from a butcher's in Wishaw, whom I had never heard of before at all until that point. And that butcher's was John Barr.
John Barr and Sons is a large, thriving butcher's shop in the centre of Wishaw. Employing about 40 people, 50-year-old Barr has just been named the Scottish Master Butcher of the Year. But Liddell and Ahmed are dealing with 15 E. coli cases. 8 of them have already mentioned eating meat from John Barr, the same butcher who supplied the Wishaw Church lunch that Harry Shaw and 74 of his elderly friends ate last Sunday. The trail leads to Barr's shop. Investigators confront him that night.
Mr. Barr,
They explain that Barr's meat must be swabbed as soon as possible to enable the growing of bacterial cultures back at the lab.
E. coli? I don't understand.
If the cultures contain communities of the specific E. coli bacterium found in the little girl, then John Barr's shop is infected. DNA fingerprinting of the bug will prove whether Barr's shop is the source.
I don't understand, but it's not from my kitchens or from my shop. And you think it's from my kitchens?
E. coli was still a new kid on the block, so not many butchers were aware of this. But we also had to confess to him that, look, we only got a hunch. We don't have any proof that his shop is the source.
This bacterial infection. You can do whatever test you like, but you find it's not come from my kitchens or my shop. It's clean.
Ahmed's team points out that it could take up to 2 weeks for E. coli infection to produce symptoms. More people could be infected than anyone realizes yet.
You won't find it from my kitchens and my shop, okay?
We will establish.
Mr. Barr, this is a very...
It's soon confirmed that Harry Shaw is infected, and more people are reporting symptoms in Wishaw.
You can do your test. You take whatever you want.
John Barr is shocked. E. coli is not something he's familiar with. The team requests him to stop selling cooked meats while they carry out tests which could take over a week to complete. They will also need details of who the butcher supplies.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barr, for your time.
I get the feeling that he really didn't take us seriously because he thought it's just a hunch, nothing more. Therefore, until they got full evidence or full proof, I suspect he wasn't aware of the full implication of what we were telling him.
The team asks Barr to stop selling cooked meat, but Barr later claims to have been confused about just what could leave his shop. But the butcher has already prepared 300 slices of cold meat for Lauren McFarlane's party tomorrow. Meanwhile, 17 miles away from Wishaw in Bonnybridge, 70-year-old Annie Criggy is struck down with diarrhea and stomach pains, symptoms of E. coli poisoning. But she hasn't visited John Barr's shop in Wishaw and wasn't at the parish lunch where Harry Shaw contracted E. coli. How could she be infected? A terrifying truth will soon emerge about the spread of the outbreak, but not soon enough. Day 7. Overnight, the number of people suffering from E. coli symptoms has skyrocketed. And though a full alert hasn't been declared, local hospital admissions have doubled. At the 2 hospitals in Wishaw, there is panic. There is no cure for E. coli. All the hospitals can do is tend to the symptoms. Isolation wards are filling up, and with so many E. coli victims, the bacteria could spread within the hospitals. 7 a.m. Dr. Ahmed's team remove 5 tons of meat from John Barr's shop for testing. It's not an unusual amount for a butcher in a town this size, and the scope of Barr's operation has not yet become apparent. The health department take no legal action to close him down. Barr continues selling meat that may be infected with a killer. Later that morning, he hands over 300 slices of cooked meats for Lauren McFarlane's party tonight. Her mother Faye will spend the rest of the day preparing the buffet. As far as Lauren McFarlane was concerned, Barr was the best butcher in town.
I'll be with you in a minute. Hi,
John Barr's was highly recommended at the time. I did have a good reputation.
Great, thanks.
You sure?
Don't worry, you get on with your disco. You won't.
11 a.m. Dr. Ahmed's inspectors have disastrous news. They have spent the morning interviewing Barr's staff and are horrified by their shop practices.
When they did detailed investigation, exactly how the food is prepared, it's quite clear that a significant number of his workforce did not have any basic food hygiene training.
Wishaw is largely unaware of the outbreak. Life continues as normal. Lauren is looking forward to her party. And in Bank Knock, 16 miles away, Norma Adams, the catering manager of the Bankview nursing home, has just bought some cold ham in a local shop.
We're actually out of the main kitchen. We're just using one of the other smaller kitchens. And we're actually going to make sandwiches later that afternoon with tea. And I thought, right, I'll just go and get some more meat because I didn't think I would have enough.
In Wishaw, rumours circulate concerning E. coli and the butcher. People are now queuing to be admitted to hospital.
Yeah, I know, it's just rumours and that's it. OK, excuse me.
Lauren's uncle calls the shop. He wants reassurance that the meat is safe. He's told it's fine and that the family have nothing to worry about.
No, Davy, just one moment. OK, in a minute. Look, Davy, look, you just all have a good time, OK? Yeah.
"3:30 p.m. Norma serves sandwiches to the frail residents at the Bankview nursing home. Meanwhile, in Wishaw, Dr. Ahmed's team are tracing the vital food chain. But they make a crucial error. They rely entirely on a handwritten list from Barr's wife Elaine detailing the clubs and companies that the butcher supplies. This includes 25 local groups like the Post Office, the Wishaw Golf Club, and a distributor. But they fail to look at a file containing a wider range of distribution. As the hospitals continue to struggle with the tide of victims, Lauren's mother Faye is still concerned about food poisoning and Barr's meat. She phones Law Hospital, now at the epicenter of the outbreak. Amazingly, she is informed by a doctor that she and Lauren should forget her worries and enjoy their party.
Oh, all right then. Okay. Yeah, oh yeah, we'll have a great time. Thanks very much. Yeah, no, thanks for your time. Okay, bye.
The outbreak control team makes a formal statement to the press. E. coli suddenly becomes a top national news story.
2 people, one of them a 7-year-old child, are seriously ill after an outbreak of...
In Bank View, Norma Adams hasn't been shopping in Wishaw for a long time. She bought her meat from the Scott Mid store in Bank Knock. It doesn't occur to her that it may be tainted. Ahmed's team now have a clear idea of just how unhygienic John Barr's shop is. Though clean and smart to the eye, his shop could provide the ideal breeding ground for E. coli. The E. coli 0157 bacterium lives in some cows without causing them any harm. They pass millions of the microorganisms out into their feces every day. At the abattoir, fresh slaughtered meat can pick up the bug from feces or from discarded intestines. The contaminated meat is then transferred into the butcher's shop. This is the critical stage. If infected meat is cooked for 2 minutes, beyond 70 degrees centigrade, the E. coli is destroyed. But if raw, infected meat is brought into contact with cooked meat, like cold ham or turkey, the bacteria will simply step across. If no further cooking takes place, the bacteria have a fast track into the human gut. But the health department still hasn't completed tests to prove Barr's shop is the source of the epidemic. Could the butchers be a major red herring? At Barr's, the investigations continue. One member of staff describes how he moves from cutting raw meat to cutting cooked meat, without cleaning the knife that is used to cut both, one of the surest ways to feed the killer bug into the food chain. Lauren and her family have forgotten all about the E. coli scare. The outbreak seems a million miles away. But the sinister bacteria is silently spreading through the 129 partygoers. After it has been eaten, the bacteria travels down into the intestine if it is not killed off by the strong acids in the stomach. The organism quickly attaches itself to the intestine wall and begins reproducing. The intestine is a fertile breeding ground. Within 2 weeks, there could be millions of bacteria per millimeter. The next morning, day 8. The usual sore heads are expected after Lauren's party, but hangovers turn to hell for many of her guests.
I got a phone call from one of my friends' mums. Basically, he had taken out. She had phoned basically saying, I need to ask you, where did you get your buffet from? He's in suspected food poisoning, possibly E. coli. And at that point, I just went, I'll get my mum.
As Lauren's friends begin suffering the horrifying symptoms, things are about to get worse. John Barr and his staff are cleaning the shop from top to bottom. The shop has never been dirty to the eye, and John Barr can be optimistic about the cleanup operation. E. coli 0157 is only transmitted via the food chain. It's not carried in the air. It has to be eaten. Therefore, it can be washed away.
Come on, son.
No problem.
Bobby, over here, son. Ali, freezer. Now, come on, lads.
But since Barr doesn't use an antibacterial agent, the Big Clean merely spreads the bug around the premises. Further interviews reveal a nasty surprise. Delivery driver John Holloway explains that he doesn't just deliver to Wishaw.
John Barr gave us the impression that he is a local butcher and he supplies some local caterers on a daily basis, as well as selling over the counter. We had no inclination whatsoever that he's a major supplier for almost the whole of central belt of Scotland.
Inspectors might have been able to make the connection earlier, but the interview makes clear that Barr's drivers are servicing a wide network.
And Bonnybridge, how much meat do you think you shift per week? I mean, what's the tonnage?
That's once a week. Deliver about 3.5 tons of...
You deliver 3.5 tons to places like Bonnybridge?
Aye.
Scotmid supermarkets were not on Elaine Barr's list, though she will later claim to have mentioned them. The outbreak now affects a company with over 50 branches, Scotmid. The whole of central Scotland could now be at risk.
Obviously, so you're just doing those. Are the other drivers?
That afternoon, at the Bankview nursing home, Norma Adams once again serves cold meat sandwiches to the residents, bought from one of the Scotmid stores John Barr supplies. Dr. Ahmed knows they need to understand the details and scope of the epidemic, and as soon as possible. Delays mean more time for the deadly E. coli to spread.
There is a comprehensive list that is not issued.
The next day, the investigators intensified their search to establish Barr's supply network.
Can I remind you of the seriousness of this matter?
I understand, but you can't prove that it actually came from this shop.
But John Barr continues trading, feeling he has been unfairly targeted. The local community come out in support of the butcher. In Monklands Hospital, Harry Shaw is unconscious and fading fast. Day 10. At 6:45 in the morning, Harry Shaw dies. The E. coli has totally destroyed his kidneys. Local journalist Raymond McHugh remembers the fear this first death generated.
I think people were stunned when the first pensioner died, because at that point it went from being a bit of a tummy upset to something that was a killer.
Toxins kill blood cells in the small blood vessels of the brain, which clog up. This stops the blood supply, and the brain cells start to die. E. coli also turns off the kidneys. Poisonous toxins given off by the E. coli kill the blood cells in vessels that supply the organs. This prevents oxygen getting to the kidneys, and this in turn stops them purifying the blood. The body drowns in its own toxic waste. Less than 12 hours after Harry Shaw dies in hospital, Annie Creagy collapses in her flat in Bonnybridge. At 7 o'clock in the evening, she is found by her daughter. Within 2 hours, she is declared dead. Her symptoms only began 4 days ago, but the E. coli rapidly destroyed her nervous system. This morning, Annie's speech was slurred. There was nothing anyone could do as the bacteria took her life. Annie Kriege loved ham, turkey and pork sandwiches. When her daughter looked in her fridge, the first thing she noticed was a packet of John Bar roast pork. It came from the Scottmid store in Bonnybridge, where the meat served to the patients at the nursing home was bought. The outbreak is reaching its deadly peak.
The medical authorities are calling the situation serious, with more than 100
elderly lady who died in Bonnybridge has been named as Nan Kriege.
2 more pensioners from the Christmas lunch are also in hospital, both in a serious condition. The labs have still not proved categorically Bar is the single source of the outbreak, but the containment strategy continues to isolate the source of the bacteria, to identify where the bacteria has already spread, and to prevent further spreading. Day 11. The radius of the outbreak widens. The E. coli rampages across Scotland, and there are 120 cases between Lanarkshire and Edinburgh. Another church lunch victim, Jessie Rogerson, is declining badly. Her daughter, Agnes, recalls how difficult it was to cope with.
There was no ambulances, they were so busy. We decided that we would take our mum ourselves. This was very difficult because my mum was very, very weak. To get into the car, we had to put a bin bag in my mum because the diarrhoea was so bad.
It has now been established that John Bar has supplied 214 food outlets with potentially contaminated meat. The local community know Bar is being probed by the health department, but what they don't know are the details of the unfolding investigation. They continue to rally around him.
There was a lot of people who were loyal to John Bar saying this has nothing to do with him, you know. My picture was put in the paper. People were approaching me in the street saying, you're ruining his business, you know.
Monklands Hospital in Airdrie is dealing with most of those who've taken ill. 21 adults and 4 children are said to be giving cause for concern. On the day that the first victim of the bug was buried, the Scottish Secretary has again strenuously denied that information...
Harry Shaw's family even sends flowers to John Bar on the day of the old man's funeral as a goodwill gesture. The bacteria are spreading. The residents at Bankview Nursing Home have started to get the symptoms. The meat they were served wasn't bought from John Bar's shop. It was bought from the Scottmid store, where the slicing machine was contaminated by John Bar's infected meat. Day 12. 2 more pensioners die. 79-year-old Marion Muir and Alexander Gardiner, 69. Gardiner is another victim of the parish lunch, and Jessie Rogerson is just clinging to life.
She was in real pain. She was terribly pained. There was a fear in my mother's eyes that I'd never seen. I'd never seen before.
Jessie Rogerson succumbed to the infection at 3 in the afternoon. At the same time, finally, it is forensically proved that the E. coli 0157 that has now killed 5 people definitely came from Bar's shop. The process of DNA fingerprinting is what enables the scientists to be certain the E. coli 0157 found in the shop is the same one causing the outbreak.
Just like forensic scientists look at criminals' DNA and say that weapon has been contaminated with the DNA of that particular person or victim or whatever, and you can be pretty certain that that's true. It's the same with E. coli 157. We have a DNA fingerprinting method where we can say, yes, that strain is the same as that one or it's different from that one. The evidence is overwhelmingly strong from the DNA fingerprinting method we use that these strains were all exactly the same. In all the bacteria that we've recovered from the victims of the outbreak and from the meat found in Barr's shop, they all had exactly the same E. coli or 157 in them.
It has taken 12 days to prove this. Scientists have had to test everything in Barr's shop to make sure there's only one strain and one bacteria, and that it is the source of all infection in Wishaw. Despite Barr's efforts to keep his shop clean, the bug was found on a vacuum packing machine, 8 raw beef samples and a cooked ham, and 6 roast beef samples sold over the counter were heavily infected.
Clearly this was an outstanding outbreak in the sense of the evidence of E. coli being everywhere, and not just being everywhere, but being there in large amounts.
The same bacteria was also found on the boiler used to cook the church hall lunch, but the meal that has so far left 3 dead was served piping hot. How could the bacteria have survived boiling temperatures to travel from Barr's shop to the pensioners' plates? On the Friday afternoon before the Sunday lunch, one of Barr's staff put 15 pounds of beef trim in cooking bags to make stew. This was put into the shop's boiler. It was cooked for 3 hours, which should have killed off any bugs. The next morning, the warm bags were removed and placed near to the boiler. The bags of stew and pastries were delivered to the vicar's wife at the church hall. The bags were placed on chairs and the pastries in the kitchen. The vicar's wife cut open the stew bags and poured the stew into aluminium tins and the excess gravy into an ice cream tub. All were left out in the room overnight. At 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, the tins of stew were cooked for over 2 hours at 500 degrees centigrade. The pastries were added before lunch was served at 12:45. The stew and pastries were piping hot. Stew, gravy, and pastry. One of these was the source of the E. coli bacteria. It is suggested that the bags full of stew picked up the E. coli from John Barr's kitchen. When opened, the outside of the bags contaminated the stew and the gravy. Both were then left overnight in the church hall. The E. coli rapidly replicated in the warm stew and gravy. The next day, everything was cooked enough to kill the E. coli, except the gravy. It was never reheated at all, and the E. coli lurked unseen and alive.
The gravy from the church hall as well, when we tested that, the technician who did the results came rushing out of the lab. He'd never seen so much E. coli 157 in a foodstuff before.
On the day after Harry Shaw and Annie Criggy died, John Barr voluntarily closes his shop out of respect. Day 17.
A 72-year-old woman has become the 6th person to die in the outbreak of E. coli food poisoning, and it's emerged that infected meat was served at a party the day after...
25 partygoers from Lauren's party are now infected. One will suffer life-threatening kidney failure as the E. coli attacks his bowels.
At the time, he was given 24 hours to live. Part of his bowel had been eaten away by the E. coli and he had to get a colostomy. Just really, it was just a terrible time.
Bacterial infections are traditionally treated with antibiotics, which stop the replication of the microorganisms. But some scientists believe they can actually help to poison the patients.
For E. coli 157, it's particularly difficult to treat because, in fact, we don't have any specific treatment for the bug itself. There's a general consensus view that giving antibiotics is a bad thing, because that kills off the bug and causes it to release toxins which it otherwise wouldn't release. And it's the toxins that cause the serious damage to the kidneys and the brain.
Much of the battle is entirely left to the human immune system. Britain is put on a public health full alert. And the British government's Scottish office launches a major advertising campaign to warn and educate the public. Personal hygiene is now a factor.
Remember, food poisoning can easily be avoided.
On day 18, a fifth church lunch pensioner dies, bringing the death toll to 7. 45 of the 87 people who attended the lunch are now confirmed with E. coli infection, and 12 are fighting for their lives. As public confidence drops and the scale of the crisis grows, 5 environmental health inspectors set up a police incident room in Wishaw. It now seems likely charges will be made against John Barr. As hospitals struggle, the Scottish National Blood Transfusion Service starts to run dangerously low on supplies. The crisis deepens. Day 20. Alexander Nicol, an elderly patient at Bankview Nursing Home, dies in Falkirk District Infirmary. And over the next 3 days, 2 more pensioners will die in the same way. The death rate is accelerating.
A second butcher's shop in Lanarkshire has been closed because of E. coli food poisoning. The shop in New Stevenston had been supplied with meat from the butcher already connected with the outbreak. It was confirmed earlier that a 70-year-old man from Wishaw has become the 11th person to die from E. coli.
By the 16th of December, almost a month since the church lunch, Wishaw has become the scene of a nightmare. John Smith remembers the horror of watching his mother Mary die.
There's absolutely no cure for E. coli. Well, you were sort of in a limbo, you know, you weren't thinking, you were thinking, wait a minute, this can't happen, this, you know, in this day and age, it's not real, you know, she'll come out of this.
She didn't. There are now 400 reported cases of E. coli food poisoning symptoms. John Barr is virtually in hiding. His actions are now public knowledge. Things go from bad to worse. Police are called to Barr's closed shop when the front window is shattered.
You know, people were wondering, when is this going to end? How many more people are going to die?
Almost 2 months into the worst recorded E. coli outbreak in history, the Scottish Butcher of the Year is prosecuted after supplying meat to Lauren's disco party. The death toll now stands at 15. 10 days later, the outbreak is declared officially over. There have been no new cases for almost a month. The disease has been stamped out, but the fear of E. coli is very much alive. Though the disease has been contained, its victims continue to die.
The source of the E. coli was no longer there. The bars had been shut. All the meat that was out there that could have been eaten had been eaten or thrown away. And so that was the end of the E. coli 0157 of that particular outbreak. But it wasn't the end of the damage it was doing, because some of those people went on with long illnesses which are eventually fatal.
503 probable cases have been dealt with. By the end of January, 19 elderly people have died, 4 of them from Bankview Nursing Home, 8 of them from the Christmas lunch. In the end, 13 people would be left with permanent kidney damage, requiring dialysis for the rest of their lives. The last death connected with the outbreak occurred in June 1997, about 5 months after the outbreak officially ended. 21 people died as a result of getting E. coli. Wishaw had seen the world's most deadly E. coli infection. After an investigation by Hugh Pennington's group and a fatal accident inquiry, the lessons to be learned were clear. Pennington demanded specific training for butchers handling raw and cooked meat, and pushed for constant antibacterial washing of premises, tools, and hands.
At the end of the day, it was the E. coli 157 that did the damage, but it was John Barr's actions or lack of actions that helped the bug to come through into the food chain and infect them. So if John Barr had been doing what many butchers were already doing, there wouldn't have been an outbreak.
E. coli kills over 500,000 people every year. The bacteria is still with us. Each year, it causes 16,000 times more deaths than the Ebola virus. Only 5 months after the Wishaw outbreak was declared over, 4-year-old Tom Dowling picked up an unrelated infection at a farm in St Albans, just north of London. He was left paralysed and brain damaged.
This is just not a tummy upset. This is something that breaks down every organ in your body, that causes terrible pain and death. This is something that could happen to anyone tomorrow, just with somebody flicking their finger and touching something they shouldn't, and you pick it up. E. coli was horrible. It was horrible to watch. It must have been terrible for my mum. It's a horrific death for anyone.
The fatal accident inquiry accused John Barr of negligence and of putting his business interests above honesty. But in court, the legal case against him collapsed. Scottish law requires 2 separate strands of evidence for a case to proceed. The Health Department's submission alone was not enough. The department was criticised for not acting quickly enough, and Barr was eventually fined for food hygiene breaches. He was ordered to pay £2,250.